Greetings and salutations. You've successfully arrived at the Bloody Disgusting Network. The passage of time will now bring you to something strange, unique, and idiosyncratic. Have a good time.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast presented by Bloody FM. I'm your host, Michael Monroeville Mall Roffman, and that name, actually, I believe, dials back to the book episode you're about to listen to today, because we've got two episodes that we're dusting off, and we really are dusting them off, because if you recall, 5 years ago, we did cover If It Bleeds as part of a promotional campaign as with Scribner or Simon Schuster or something that was happening. But look, it was the pandemic. We had tons of time, and we thought, hey, why not cover this new book to keep our mind off of things? But something happened there. And what happened is that we decided that, well, we're having a lot of fun covering the new books. So from here on out, we eventually went on and started covering our new books for our Patreon, which we had started around that time too. So we're done, technically. We still have Faithful and A Face in the Crowd, which Justin Gerber will be covering this month as well. So you're getting like multiple book episodes. But so, behind the paywall though, the Barrens, we've got all the rest of the book episodes. And I believe we did actually unlock later eventually. So yeah, look, it's all commingled. But either way, if you connect the dots, maybe play Holly Gibney, hint, hint, you can actually find all the book episodes without Never Flinch, which is the new one that's going to be coming out in May, which we will be covering, and that will be behind the paywall. So it's a pretty exciting time, a little confusing time, especially if you're either just coming into the show or you've been following us and haven't been a member of our Patreon, The Barrens. So correct that, www.patreon.com/The Barrens if you want to listen to all the rest of the book episodes we have, everything from Billy Summers to Gwendy's Final Task to Holly to Fairy Tale. I mean, there's all of them are in there, including You Like It Darker, both parts, which is a hell of an episode or two-parter. But yeah, so right now, what you're going to be able to do is we're bumping up our coverage from If It Bleeds, which was almost 5 years ago to this day. This is April. This came out, I believe, in April of 2020, right at the crack of the pandemic. And these two episodes were recorded in the thick of it. And so, pardon our references for what's going on. We do tend to actually get a little emotional. This first part, though, is for the other stories that aren't the main novella, and that being Mr. Harrigan's Phone, The Life of Chuck, and Rat. And then the second episode is all about the titular story at hand, If It Bleeds. So I'm not going to do an intro for that one. This is, otherwise you're going to be like, why am I hearing him all the time? But anyway, know that these two episodes are here. We've got A Face in the Crowd and Faithful coming up. And by the way, I don't know if you've seen it, but in our Barrens, patreon.com/The Barrens, Justin Gerber is actually making his sequel to Faithful by talking about this year's season of the Cubs. So very exciting times over at the Losers Club. And enjoy this episode. And if you've already read it, hey, maybe revisit this again and see what we've been saying. Hopefully we don't say too many contentious things. Or, we're probably talking a lot about, what's going on with this crazy COVID? Because it was pretty early on. But pardon the dust, as they say, and enjoy the ride. And we'll see you next week over long days and pleasant nights.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you want to make love, then I do too. And I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh. All in the name of oh. All in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast. I'm Michael, 39 great years Roffman, killing time as I sit here in the Harrigan estate, surrounded by all sorts of houseplants, watching Mrs. Grogan vacuuming in the living room, and waiting for Mr. Rafferty to arrive. Don't get those
Jesus
references?
Christ.
Well, then you probably didn't read Stephen King's latest book, If It Bleeds. And that's going to be a problem for you because that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. Well, not all of If It Bleeds. Today we're going to be covering the the first 3 novels in the collection. Well, not the first 3, but 3. Specifically, Mr. Harrigan's Phone, The Life of Chuck, and Rat. We're going to be saving the Holly Gibney adventure for next week's episode.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, because that's what it's called. The titular, If It Bleeds, we're going to be saving that for next week because it's a little on the long side, and we have a lot to talk about because it involves your favorite character, Holly Gibney. But before we go any further, I have a call, and no, it's not from 6 Feet Under. It's from across town here in Chicago.
Oh, is it me?
Yes.
This is Randall Ratburn rockin'. I'm excited to talk about this. I'm glad that I can actually talk to other people about it because I read it early because I reviewed it at my day job and I could send screenshots of Holly saying poopy to my friends, but that was pretty much the extent of my ability to talk about it. So yeah, this will be fun. And by the way, I actually did used to get made fun of and called Randy the Rat because I have a big nose and people are just mean. And so I just want to say that I'm owning it now. I am Randy the Rat, and you can't take it away from me.
Well, I will take it away from you because I think it's a mean name, but we'll make it fun, just like the fun story Rat, which closes out this novellas collection. If It Bleeds, currently available on bookshelves. If you haven't heard our ads that are going to be floating around this episode. Anyway, I'm getting another caller, all the way from the deep heart of Texas.
Because I'm in Texas, this is Dan. All right, Caffrey. Oh. I was wondering if we were all going to do rat puns for our introductions. It looks like maybe we are, but we'll see. We still have one person. Oh no, Mike did do a rat pun. I did not. No.
Well, you know what, Mike? Mike, the Rat Man forgive you this time.
Ooh, looks like you can't evade the Rat Man at all.
Everyone needs to do either a rat or a poopy pun.
Oh, yeah. I was expecting someone to go with, X poopy Y as their name, but maybe you could save it for next week when we talk about that actual story.
Yeah, thanks for the idea.
Dan, you read this book in record speed, I feel like, for you. You've read books in one day, but I feel like you because you read The Outsider before this, right?
Yeah, I was reading. I read the first 2 stories, and then I got to the title story, which I actually did not know was another adventure with our favorite character, Holly Gibney. Oh. I'm so glad King has revisited her just as much as Roland and Randall Flagg and Father Callahan, because I think she's right up there. Anyway, that's I know we're not talking about that this episode. So when I got to that, I texted you guys and I was like, "Hey, is this going to spoil The Outsider?" And you were like, "Definitely so." So I read The Outsider, and then I had a couple days left to read If It Bleeds. So yeah, I felt like I read both. I kind of felt like The Outsider. If I'm being honest, I skimmed a little more so than I usually do because it's pretty long and just to get it done. So and I read both of them digitally, which was tough for me.
Wow.
I usually am not a digital reader. I like the hard copy. And it's interesting
agree.
too because I wasn't. I feel like when I read a hard copy, I always know when it's going to end. Like I know how many pages I have left. I know you can do that on a digital reader, but I didn't. And I feel like that kind of altered the pacing of the books and my expectation of the books in a weird way. But I'll wait till we get to the stories to talk about that. But yeah, so it was a double King week for me.
Yeah, sounds like it. A whole lot of King going on.
Whole lot of rat poopy going on.
Yeah, oh God, here we go. Well, look, we have one more caller coming all the way from Nashville, Tennessee. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Jenn Adams. And I'm coming from Nashville, and I read this pretty quickly too, and I loved it.
Yeah. You had some very similar moments, I believe, to the character in Rat. Actually, not to bring Rat back again. You lost power throughout some of this reading.
I did. Yeah, we had some really stormy past couple of days, and our power was out for about 12 hours. And I finished If It Bleeds and Rat while our power was out and while it was storming. So it was really fun. And I was reading Life of Chuck as my father-in-law was having brain surgery. So we were kind of waiting to hear. So this was a weird book for me to read like right now. There are so many things that kind of dovetail with my life, and we can talk about it, but and I think that's part of why I loved it so much. But I also realized today that my mind was kind of wandering while I was reading Life of Chuck, probably because I had that thing going on. So I had to reread it today to make sure I knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, I actually found it interesting that it feels like I've been with this book a while, but it's been actually less than a week. Like Caffrey, I had a digital copy that was sent, and I just couldn't read it on there. I just kept getting messages, and I kept checking my email and then Twitter, and I just wasn't going to happen. So I actually went to Target and braved the public to get it. And
you put people at risk.
I did. I put people at risk. I wasn't wearing a mask. I was coughing over everything. No, I'm just joking. I was wearing a mask totally. Every time we walk out with my mask on and a backpack, I feel like a character in The Last of Us. Yeah.
Have you played that game?
I love that game. Yeah,
I love it too.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
I can't wait for the sequel coming out soon.
It's already leaked.
Yeah, has it already leaked?
Yeah, but I don't touch leaks. I'm noble.
Yeah, how do you play a leaked game?
I have no idea. I think on your computer.
I know back in the day, my brother-in-law Mike Belletta, who listens to the podcast. I hope I'm not selling him out and get
the feds are going to get him.
He's a nurse practitioner in New York City. So if you take him, you're taking away
not for long.
After
this story.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's like, come on, I'm saving lives every day. They're like,
he's going to jail.
They're like, at what cost, friend? Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
It's like you really shouldn't have, bootlegged Crash Bandicoot in 2004.
No joke. I mean, that's really the kind of game you see, because this is back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And the way, from what I remember, it was different for each system, but for PlayStation, you got a little spring that you had to put on this little tab that was actually inside where you put the discs. And the spring held the lid open and then pressed down on some kind of mechanism to activate it. Then you had what was called an emulator disc, I think, and that you put in to start it up. And I remember it had this metallic-looking reindeer. And so you start that up. Once that's going, and it stops spinning, you take that disc out. Then you put the burn disc of whatever leaked game you have in there.
Good Lord.
And then the reindeer, I remember this, like the reindeer was chrome, and then it sort of illuminated with the pattern of whatever the game design was. So if it was like Twisted Metal, it would like illuminate with like Sweet Tooth or whatever it was. It was pretty crazy. It was such an extensive process, but I mean, I hate to say it, we played so many games illegally.
Oh, I imagine.
And from what I understand, I think because there's always that argument of, what does pirating actually put things out of business? I think with Dreamcast, because Dreamcast was especially easy to pirate, I remember reading that it actually did. I don't know if that's true.
I think it was. Yeah.
That being said, Mike Belletta is a hero and a nurse practitioner in New York City. Do not take him off the front lines for what I just said.
Well, they won't. And hey, you just spent a good deal of time talking about aughts technology. Speaking of all aughts technology,
nice. Good segue.
The first story that we're going to be discussing, Mr. Harrigan's phone, and I mention aughts technology because this phone happens to be the first model iPhone. Back at a time when Mr. Steve Jobs was still around and kicking and wasn't 6 feet under like Mr. Harrigan. Spoiler. Anyway, let's go into this book. I'm going to read a little synopsis that I made for it.
Nice.
And then I have a couple questions here. A couple of questions. We'll have a fun discussion. Anyway, synopsis for this. Great. I love it. The elevator pitch on our first story. It's short, sweet, classic King. A teenager discovers that the cell phone buried with his old friend, emphasis on old, still communicates from beyond the grave. That's it. That's the thing I love about this story personally is the fact that it is very old school in the sense that, like, most of these authors when they were coming up kind of had to have an elevator pitch instead of going, well, actually, no, it's about the human condition and it's an Americana story set in the Wild West. And the Wild West is actually supposed to stand for, no, it's one line. And for me, the simplicity of the story is honestly what sticks out the most. And I think it's a story hinged on an easy premise, and it's kind of staggering that King hadn't done this already. And don't you feel the same way?
Well, didn't he do Cell?
He did do Cell, but like
Cell screws the pooch by the end.
I know, I agree.
Still haven't read it.
I wish Cell actually stuck closer to its premise than it does. I really. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No, I was gonna say it just goes bonkers.
Oh God! I hate when the zombies start talking. I'm just
I'm done.
Yeah. Oh, I hate it.
And not even on a cell phone.
It's that thing of like Mike always says this about The Stand also, and The Stand is much better all the way through, but it's that thing of him, he's so good at developing the breakdown of society, which we see in one of the other stories here.
Yeah.
But then when after that Cell, it's like you didn't know where to go. No, what I was going to say was that, I kind of enjoyed how Rat and Mr. Harrigan's phone were both almost like throwback to Simple King, which I really like, because I'm reading Nightmares and Dreamscapes right now for the upcoming episode. And there's definitely some stinkers in that book, but for the most part, a lot of the stories, they're just like such straightforward, gruesome horror, and I really like that. And we don't always get that from King, especially nowadays with his full-length books. It's always some kind of genre mashup or whatever else. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I know I say the phrase "classic King" a lot, but I do feel like that book really delivered on that, even with my misgivings about Holly Gibney, my misgivings, but rather.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I was texting Randall reading it, that was literally the first thing he got back was just like classic King. And I can't agree more. I mean, one of the things that's so easy about this, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned Cell, is that book starts out with something simple, where it's just a beam that, hits the phones and everyone kind of goes nuts. But unlike, say George Romero, who keeps it simple, Night of the Living Dead, and keeping it to the house, like Cell just goes all over the place. And it's like it becomes a road book, and then it becomes this like whole complicated matter of the people that were hit with the satellite beam or whatever it was in the cell phone become these like free-thinking zombies that are floating, and it just becomes over the top. Whereas what I love about this is that it never strays from its initial premise. It's just, that is what it is. And I think that's kind of the strongest suit of the story. I mean, did you want anything more from this, or do you think that sticking kind of just true to that to that one conceit is kind of its strength also? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm of two minds about it, because I love the simplicity of it. I think what makes it so good is that it doesn't have sort of a, I don't know, like I think about like a book like The Library Policeman, right? That has sort of this bizarre climax in the library where everybody, all these various characters coalesce. There's sort of a big battle. It feels like a set piece in a movie. Whereas when in this, it's sort of like we get, it's like more of a quieter journey, and it's more about the way that this, like what happens with Mr. Harrigan, the supernatural element isn't emphasized so much as sort of what it does emotionally and developmentally to this character, and the way it kind of haunts him. And so, but we get the eeriness of it without having to like reckon with the actual physical, like some kind of physical monster, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I like that about it, but at the same time, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think it ended a tad anticlimactically, just in terms of maybe what I like in a King story. But I don't know, but I think overall I really liked it. It was definitely, in my review on AV Club, I called it, satisfying, if unremarkable. And I stand by that. I think it's not anything I would throw in my top tier King stories, but a lot of times this is what I want from a King story.
Exactly.
Not every one is going to blow your mind, and I'm fine with that, because sometimes you just want, like, I don't know, like the general concept of the texts he gets back that are sort of that little nonsense, like
CCCAA.
Yeah, that's so creepy to me. I hate that because, like, I don't know. Yeah, I like
is that
this
Caw?
Oh, hey, there you go. That's an idea.
I was like, what is that? I was trying to think of it, and I don't know, maybe.
Well, phone games are really fucking scary, and if people fuck with you phone wise, and it's kind of moved over to Twitter too. Every now and then I get really bizarre messages on Twitter from people who I've never encountered, and they speak to me in a way like they know me, and not just like, not in any specific way, but in like a way where it's like I'm supposed to know what they're talking about. I know that's vague. It just happened to me yesterday, and it's weird. But then I like also like there was a whole. This is a funny story. There's a prank that was happening to me many years ago that almost, it was like I didn't know it was a prank. Basically I was getting calls. I would get calls like once every, I don't know, 5 or 6 months from this number, but it was always blocked, and then it would always be late at night, and they would always ask me if I had been to this one specific restaurant that was in the town where I went to college.
Weird.
And then I would be like, I would either, well, I just stopped answering because I was figuring it was this caller, but they would always say like, were you, and the name of the restaurant was Alongi's, but they called it Alongios, which was really weird. And they said, were you at Alongios tonight? And then if I answered, yes or no or whatever, they would always scream, then why do I have this number? And then they would hang up. And but then they would just leave that on my answering machine. But I mean, a lot of it started out like they would be serious, and then it just became, and it was always different voices, and it was people and then they would usually be laughing when they were saying it. So I like it really unnerved me but less because I thought it was scary, and more because I just don't like being fucked around with. You know? It's like, it's really, I hate the idea that there's like a group of people who have a joke about me out there. And it ended up being actually a pretty good friend of mine, and it was never done in mean spirit or anything, but it was just, she told me like at a New Year's party once that it was her, and I was cool about it, but at the same time, like, and she used to say, she's like, oh, I used to like scour your blogs and try to see if you were ever writing about it or anything, and I never did, but it was just, but it was like something I talked to like my therapist about. And so anyways, that's a long-winded story, but basically like the idea that people are contacting you, whether it's through the internet or whether it's over the phone, and if you're unsure of that communication, or that communication throws you off guard, to me that's like a really potent kind of horror. And so anyways, the text that I think that those texts, then sort of the enigmatic nature of them was one of the more effective parts of it.
100% agree. And I think conceptually, that's the thing that's going to stick with me. And I think the fact that you take something from the story that treats a concept as new, and then also as something that you can kind of think about later on is kind of the power of King. Like when you think back and like the stuff, like, I mean, we talk all the time about how King, especially throughout the 80s, was, that he's the author that has the thing that becomes something that's dangerous, like the car,
like
the killer car.
Lamp.
Yeah, exactly. And with this, this is a relatively new idea, the idea that technology and the death and like the ghost within speaking through the technology. I mean, we've only seen a few things that have actually successfully done it. I think like the Unfriended series actually does a pretty good one, at least the first, I mean, especially the first one, because that actually deals with the supernatural. But, I think with this, I agree, Randall. I think that the concept is what really stands out here, because one of the questions I actually had was, do you think that King kind of pulls his punches with the horror? Because I feel like this could have been scarier. And I think that, I wonder if this was written by, King in the 70s and 80s. Granted, obviously the technology wasn't there, but I'm talking about the mentality of King and the person that he was. Do you think that he would have gone a little bit more for the jugular, and maybe you wouldn't have felt as if the ending was kind of anticlimactic?
Yeah, I think he absolutely would have dug up that phone in the 70s or 80s. Yeah. And like when I was reading it, I was thinking this is a little anticlimactic, but I think what I see in this, and kind of what I see in this overall collection, is kind of a mix of old King and new King. Like I see the old school, because this is a buried alive story is what it boils down to. And I think it's really cool that he does this in such a fresh way. But what I see overall is this is him like accepting death and like exploring the concepts of death and kind of making his peace with it. And so I see him like revisiting all of these little things from like his old writing, and like my like 237 column in my notes like was blowing up because I just kept seeing all these little references. And I think it's almost like he's writing softer endings to this, or he's like kind of establishing order in some of the stories that he wrote before, because one of the big parallels I see in this one is apt pupil. And that where's like there's the old guy and the young kid, and like this is like the happier version of it, or the more positive version. And I see him kind of not rewriting history, but like going back and like revisiting the themes, but writing them in a more uplifting way.
Yeah, no, that's so funny you mention that, people, because right when they start meeting, and the fact that he comes up to him through the church, and after the church, and he's like, hey, you want to read with me, and there is that sort of. It's almost like King felt compelled to like have the dad kind of make the joke about him being like a pedophile or something like that, because you're like, well, yeah, because the disparity in age is insane. But yeah, that people thing was interesting, and it made me think, because like, offline, not offline, but off pod, Jen, you mentioned that like you almost feel as if King has been sort of reckoning with some of the things in the past. Like we talked a lot about that because of Golden Years, with Golden Years in the Shop, and I wonder, with Cell kind of being the sort of polarizing book, I wonder if that was something that he also was reckoning, and maybe he's using the echoes of App Pupil, because I mean you see it pretty much everywhere across pop culture right now. Like some of the biggest things that are trending, or events like Stranger Things, I think of, that's all it is really a culmination of echoes of past pop culture, and I wonder if King has kind of taken that into consideration for himself.
I definitely think so. And I've been thinking about that a lot since like Revival. I think like there's a moment in this book where he's talking about we get to acceptance, which is like the 5th stage of like grief or something. I'm probably saying that wrong, but like I think Revival was like the first time I really saw him wrestle with his own death, because I think there's a lot that Revival has in common with Pet Sematary, but with Pet Sematary, it's almost like the death of a loved one. And so like with Revival, I see that's like a really horrific, dark story about it. And then you see like 11/22, where he's going back to a story that he wanted to do and trying to finish it. And then like the Hodges trilogy, I think, is a lot about like retirement and like accepting that part of your life is over. And then I'm not sure exactly how The Outsider fits into that. I guess it's a continuation of that's kind of like a like changing and accepting change. And then this, I feel like, is the most uplifting writing I've read from him about like accepting his own death.
Well, yeah, like I'll just say, I think optimism is becoming a big part of him, in his latter days. And The Institute, I think, was sort of was a book that was really very optimistic, especially in the end, like the way it viewed humanity, but also viewed it like its characters, like, like the punches are a lot lighter. And I think that this is a much more optimistic version of that pupil. And also I was thinking, I don't know, weirdly, I thought a lot about Christine, like the idea of because there's sort of a weird kinship between the guy who owned the car and is it Gordy? Is that the main character?
Yeah. Arnie.
Yeah.
Arnie.
And then
it's been.
And Craig is
I wasn't on that episode, and it's been ages. But like but basically, like the guy who owned Christine, the ghost of him basically poisons Arnie and like ruins him, and that's one thing I've always enjoyed about it. But App Pupil's the same thing. Like this kid becomes ruined, so there's the same potential was here. Like basically, Mr. Harrigan's ghost through the phone, like because he was this. I love how he was sort of a friend and a mentor to this kid, but there was a darkness to him. Like basically in real life, this guy was bad news, and so I like the idea that he basically said, I'll be your hitman in death, and this kid basically, he flirted with that, and, obviously things happened, but he made the decision to not let it poison him. Like he made the decision to throw the phone away. And I think that, go Dan.
No, I was to say, I think that's pretty common for all the stories in a weird way. Like I actually thought when I was reading the story, when the teacher died, at first I thought that was the old dude killing her.
Me too.
Because the kid was getting too close to her or like he was jealous. And then you're like, oh no, he didn't kill her, and he's going to kill the guy that killed her. And I feel like in Christine, like you said, Randall, I feel like it would have been him killing the teacher, and the kid would have suffered greatly for all this, for mixing with dark forces. And then same thing with Rat later on. I mean, the writer really doesn't get comeuppance for it, And you could argue with Rat. You're like, well, was the rat even real in the first place? Which
that's
always will get
I have
to
a
that.
question on that.
And
one,
so
for sure.
it is interesting, because he kind of, and then with the book with the story of Chuck kind of flirting with these darker forces actually leads to something really good for him anyway, for being able to contain this universe within himself. And so it's interesting, because I feel like all of these stories had the potential to get a lot nastier than they did. And I like that, because we've seen Nasty King before, and I totally understand wanting to be more optimistic and forgiving in your old age as he gets older. And I think that's like a new side of King.
Well, when was the last time he was that nasty though? Like Revival?
I think there's Wait, say that again, Jen?
Revival is a harsh
Yeah,
book.
Revival's
Yeah,
ending
yeah.
is really nasty. I mean, Under the Dome's a pretty nasty book.
Oh,
I mean,
Under the Dome,
Yeah.
I love how nasty that, because that's like
do.
it's
cocaine.
like satire almost. Yeah.
Well,
But
that's
it
like
ends
cocaine
pretty
nasty.
optimistically, though, right?
Well,
Like-
I mean, only in the sense that like the dome lifts.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert,
exactly.
sorry.
I mean,
But like everybody dies.
Yeah, that's
Revival-
true.
Revival's,
It's like a murder
Revival's-
hornet component.
I would say Revival's I mean, I'm trying. I also haven't read The Institute or
Full Dark, No
Elevation.
Stars is dark.
Oh, Elevation
Oh, yeah,
is literally
Full
like
Darkness.
Hallmark. It's the closest King's ever been to Hallmark,
Really?
so that's definitely
Yeah.
not.
You know what Jen said? Full Dark, No Stars, because that's where 1922 is from. and the
Ooh,
Good
yeah,
Man. Yeah,
okay.
that's fucking nasty. That book is nasty, man.
Yeah.
Full Dark, No Stars. Even in the title, I guess.
But
too.
don't you think it's interesting that, like, okay, so we're 3 years into the Trump administration, and not to get to politics or anything, but like, I think it's important to note that, like, we are pretty much in dark times. And
Whatever do you mean, Mike?
yeah, right. I guess I wonder
You
if
just scored
he
us
feels.
at least 2 1-star reviews.
I know. Well,
right,
no,
wait, here,
things
right,
are great
right.
if you, depending on where you stand.
I'm not gonna get into politics either because I know people don't like it. But I guess I do question that a little bit. It is funny to me that a lot of King readers get really mad when we do that because King does that all the time. Like,
Oh, all
Yes,
the
he
time.
does.
It's
Like, how are
literally
you a
in
King-
in
how are
every
you a
one of
King
these
fan?
stories, he
Yeah.
has a reference to it. It's insane.
Yeah. Anyway,
Like-
just want to put that out there, but continue.
But I wonder, do you think that he feels almost compelled to, like, have some sort of comforting landing at this point? I mean, like, I wonder, like, when I say like dour, like, I'm talking Pet Cemetery dour, where, like,
Yeah.
the ending of that book, you feel as if you're just fucking, like, the most nihilistic person in the world because of where you've been placed. Does Revival? I mean, I haven't read Revival, although recently
Revival's pretty punishing at the end. I don't want to spoil
Yeah.
it if you haven't read, but it's pretty. It's kind of like a Lovecraft thing, and it ends kind of in the worst way.
Well, people are saying there are
Yeah.
parallels to Pet Cemetery in that book.
Oh,
So-
yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
a spiritual sequel to Pet Cemetery.
It's
Okay.
Revival's super underrated. I think. I
I
feel
do
like
too.
no one ever talks about it. It's such a good book, though. Yeah.
Okay. Well, either way, I think that, I guess in hindsight, looking back, because it's been, obviously the Harrigan's the first book. It's been a few days, gone through all the other stories in this book. I guess I'm fine with where this ends. I don't know if it needed to go into the dour look, but I did want to just throw it out there to see, like, do you think that this should have been more dour?
Well,
I don't know.
I'm glad you guys are talking about the endings because the thing I was going to say about reading it as an ebook and I think sometimes with King books, because I know where the story or the novel is going to end, I'm sort of clocking the pace of it, like I'm clocking the traditional dramatic structure of it, like the rise and the falling action and whatever else. And with reading this electronic copy, I didn't know. I just wasn't looking ahead. I didn't know when that was going to happen, and the page numbers don't quite correspond with where you're clicking anyway. And so even though I did like this collection a lot, all of the stories to me felt like they did just kind of end out of nowhere. And I wasn't sure if that was because of the format I was using, but it sounded like, because you guys had hard copies, it sounded like that was the case for you too. That like even if I wanted to get more nasty, I maybe just wanted something a little bit bigger to happen than, oh, I'm going to decide not to do this anymore,
Yeah.
Which is essentially what happens at the end of this book.
Well, Randall, what do you think? I mean, because I know that you said that you were the one to bring up anticlimactic, and I wholly agree with that. But would you want this to be like? Did you want like some sort of Craig's like kind of fucked at the end or something like that?
No, I don't know. I mean, like, especially talking about it. Here's the thing: is I don't love optimistic King. I'm a very cynical person, and I like dark things.
He's a
but
bad boy.
I
He's a
am.
bad boy.
I'm wearing my leather jacket right now.
He's recording
but-
this on his motorcycle.
It's true. It's true. No, I think it's like, here's the thing: is I'm not wholly like cynical, but King optimism can be very hokey, and I think that there's a general hokiness to some of his latter day work. Not always. I'm a fan of it still, but like, but his age shows sometimes. I mean, like he's at an age now where I think, and he's had a very blessed life, and I think that he's somebody who doesn't harbor any bitterness, and he seems like he's really happy with the way things are in the world right now, and he's also clearly very sensitive to how dark the world is right now. He tweets about it all the frickin' time. Like he thinks the world is in a very bad place. So I think that the way, and when you're at that age and when you're feeling more sentimental, and he's looking at his family, they're all grown up, he's living in idyllic Maine. Like I think he's in a place where he probably is like, well, I don't want to bring a lot more darkness into the world. And one of the reasons I think he loves Holly Gibney is because she is a character that basically was in many ways doomed to live an uneventful, sad, depressing life. And her whole arc is about breaking through her own shell, you know, and it's about finding her place in the world. It's a very optimistic story with Holly. And I think that's what he likes about her. Is that she is a character who is consistently in development. And we'll talk more about that next week. But I think that my whole thing is I like that he's doing this, because clearly I think that it's a side of King that's not new necessarily. He's always had happy endings, like in the past, you know, in various books and stories. But I think this is a sign of the times, a sign of where he's at in his life. And because I think it says something that all of these stories except for Rat really have, you know, pretty optimistic endings. Or optimistic views on humanity. And I even think that in a way, Rat even has an optimistic view of humanity, because it's not as if the character is necessarily, you know, the character understands the weight of what has happened. And and it's not like he is happy with what has happened. And we'll talk more about it when we get to Rat. But I just think that with Mr. Harrigan's Phone, I like the choice, and I like the idea that it is sort of and I hadn't thought of At Pupil, so that was a really smart, like, catch, Jen. I was thinking more of Christine, and there was another story I was trying to think of too, just that idea of the bond between, like, sort of ghost and human, and the idea that there can be a tender bond that exists between, like, an evil ghost and, you know, sort of I guess I was thinking of Gwendy's Button Box to a degree too.
Yeah,
you know? Like,
no, I totally was thinking, and
that's another story where, you know, the character makes a positive choice, and like, the character is not undone by this, although I have not read Richard Chismar's follow-up. So I think that, to me, it's a sign of where King's at, and you know, so I welcome it. I guess it just I guess for me, I didn't need, like, a dark ending or even, like, a bigger, I guess I just needed a bigger climax, but not like a huge battle or anything, but maybe just more of a struggle. Like, I think I just wanted more of a struggle, and maybe more of a temptation to maybe utilize the phone as he first did. But so I think that for me, it was just sort of like, oh yeah, that's nice, like, when we got there. So
well, I got two. Oh, go for it, Jen. Go for it.
Well, I was going to say, like, there's a moment in The Shining where when Jack is not drinking anymore, and he's talking about looking around the corner and seeing monsters, and then choosing to go the other way, and he just cold turkey quits. And I got that feeling over and over again when I was reading this book, and I feel like he's revisiting these plots that he has set up and then let his characters just be destroyed by, and then he's, like, choosing the more optimistic path this time. And so that, I think that is going to feel more anticlimactic, because we're used to him just letting shit burn. Like, he didn't burn any cities in this book, so it feels like it's not a King ending, but I feel like he's almost, like, maybe commenting on that and saying maybe there's more I could have done with this story.
Well, there's something interesting here that I think that you all are trying to, they're definitely itching at, because one of the things that I was really focusing on reading each one of these stories, and Jen and I were actually talking about a lot of this over Twitter, was just, like, what's unifying here. And I want to bring it up now as opposed to later, because obviously we should start this discussion as we're going through these stories. But here's my theory. When Hargensen, which, by the way, Hargensen, we back at classic King in the sense of him just kind of reusing fucking last names. Yeah, exactly.
When we get Hargensen from Carrie, right?
Yeah,
I mean, yes.
It's probably not the same. I'm sure there's no actual.
No, I doubt it. But who the fuck knows?
When it comes always annoying. It's always annoying with King, because, like, you know, when he started doing all the different connections with Dark Tower and everything, you're like, oh, this is cool. But at a certain point, you're like, whoa, that guy's last name is DeChamp. Oh, maybe he just didn't have another last name.
Oh, no, that's not the case at all. Yeah. No, but that's the thing. It's like, I always say that this is like my old adage with this podcast, is that if it's inferred, it's probably legit. You know, like, that's King's way. Anyway, one of the things that really stuck out with me is when Hargensen's talking to Craig and talking about, like, telomy and the implications for everyone having, like, you know, Craig having a Ptolemaic view of himself, of thinking that the world revolves around himself, and, you know, the children think that the world revolves around themselves. And I think that's honestly the unifying bond within these stories, and I think that speaks to almost King's message that he's trying to convey here. And that with this book, is that we are at a very weird time in humanity. It doesn't matter where we are. It could be America, it could be in Europe, it could be Asia, anywhere. We're at a point in our as humans where we're kind of having to figure out what's the next step. Are we going, not to quote American Pie, but to figure out where we're going to go, where we're going to take ourselves, and we have to start making the right choices. And I think that all the characters in every one of these stories, whether it's this, Chuck, even If It Bleeds, and certainly Rat, are forced to make choices that almost feel as if the world, or at least their world, because really when we talk about the world at large, we're really talking about ourselves. It doesn't matter how, and that could be selfish. We could say it's selfish because that's all we know is the world that's at our fingertips. And like, honestly, I feel like with the characters that he's conveying here is what Hargensen's saying is that, like, yes, we do, children do feel as if the world revolves around them. These characters, these worlds, all the choices that they're making, change and alter the world that's currently at their fingertips. With Craig here, the stuff that he's texting to this person, Harrigan under 6 feet under, is going to alternate, definitely affect the people that are around him, whether it's the bully or whether it's the person that killed Hargensen. And the same thing with Chuck, and that's literally all in his head, as we're going to discuss soon. And the same thing with Holly, because it's literally the first story that's her is with agency. And then with Rat, where you're seeing the main character where he literally has to make a Faustian bargain. So I'm wondering if that's the unifying theme, and because these end on some sort of optimistic ending, that King's basically insisting for us to basically make the right choice right now, and that that's spiritually kind of what he's trying to suggest here. And maybe that's just me being idealistic, but that's kind of what I took from this book. And that seems weird to kind of create some sort of conclusive argument in the first book here, because we literally are just tipping this off. But I wanted to put this out here because literally the discussion is in the first book. I feel like as if, obviously you make your thesis statement in the beginning. And I feel like this book does that with Hargensen. And I just wanted to open that to the floor and just feel like if anyone has comments on that, or if I sound like a fucking tinfoil hat person with that. But
no, I totally agree with that. I mean, I think all the characters here, have some crossroads they have to come to. I mean, even more with Holly. I mean, she and I know we're not supposed to get too much into If It Bleeds, but she really does have this moment where she has to decide how she's going to deal with this new outsider figure, where she's kind of trying to decide do I just trust that he's going to go on his way and not do this anymore? Or do I have to go after them? And the fact that just like Full Dark No Stars was the unifying theme was that for the most part people make the wrong choices and suffer greatly because of it. Which was in the marketing materials, and it's funny because I don't think it's in the marketing materials for this. But yeah, I could definitely see that the theme is people come to tough choices and they make the right choices. Even if something like Rat is all in his head, you still see him have this moral debate about the ethics of success and what his responsibility is. So yeah, no, I don't think that's tinfoil hat at all. I think that, I mean, I don't know, I always wonder because in Night Shift, which Night Shift was just like a lot of his collections was just a collection of published stuff, but for me, I see this very post-apocalyptic theme running through Night Shift. Now, he's never commented on whether that was his intention, and as far as I know, I don't think he has for If It Bleeds, but I would venture to say if he doesn't confirm that was the organizing principle, he would at least say these stories all do confirm his rosier view of humanity, or at least the importance of a rosier view of humanity as you get older. Yeah, so I agree.
Well, I have one last question. I feel like it's important to note. We always joke about, especially with the Institute. I think we had in our text thread, we joked about King's references to pop culture. Randall, you mentioned earlier about King showing his age. In the author's notes, he talks about this story particularly being fun to be kind of writing in this period, in this age, and he even bought an original iPhone. to kind of get the sort of experience, which I feel like that was a little over the top. I feel like you don't really need to do that. But anyway, do you think the references that he puts in this kind of feel a little distracting? I mean, he mentions like it's almost like he went to Wikipedia and was like, wow, what was hot in 2008? The Beyonce track. 2009? Wow, New York must have been hot. Like maybe I just don't remember his.
Well, he
his
does
works
that
in
in
the 70s and
Institute
80s.
Yeah,
Yes, he does for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean he definitely did do that kind of stuff in his old books. I'll always remember I knew Blue Oyster Cult from Don't Fear the Reaper, right? Mm-hmm. And when I was young, like one-hit wonders were just one-hit wonders. The idea of somebody like I wasn't thinking about the band, I was just thinking about the song. So I'll always remember when I was reading Talisman for the first time, when Jack arrives at the college or the school that his buddy's at, like he talks about how he can hear somebody listening to Blue Oyster Cult in another room. And I just remember thinking that was weird. I was like, weren't they just a one-hit wonder? Like nobody actually likes that band, which I take back now. Now they're very good. Because I grew up and I actually listened to them. But like he's always made references to like bands that I think he was into and like artists that I think he was into. But now I don't think he consumes a lot of new like music or new art. So I think the references feel forced now because he's probably either asking his grandkids or Googling or just going off what he sees on Twitter. Because whenever he posts about music and stuff on Twitter, it's like some rock record or like some like doo-wop record from 1945 or something,
So it's like oh, Mitch Ryder really knew how to shake it.
Yeah, he knew how to.
There's
shake
somebody
it.
I've never heard of.
And I like Mitch Ryder for that. But it's very and you see it a lot in the next story during the whole drumming dancing sequence, which I actually like that sequence a lot. But when he does the flashback, it's so wistful for like the golden oldies. It's a little ridiculous.
I just the references, specifically in this one, because obviously they go to like the dance and they mentions music. It really does feel as if he's like looking at like the Billboard charts for research and just being like, what was hot around this time. And I mean, I just can't fucking imagine him listening to like, Jay-Z when he's writing. I mean, who knows? Maybe he has Spotify open.
Post Malone.
Or like Post Malone. Like he's just sitting there. He's like, oh, wow, 444 by, this is actually a pretty good album. It's much better than Reasonable Doubt. But it just seems so weird to me. Like it just... maybe it's a little more garish in the Institute. I only read half of the Institute, but like I remember like when they were like
it's
talking
really
about
bad
Rihanna,
in the Institute.
That seems a little more garish. But like I guess it just feels like I'm just not used to having a story set in the aughts. Like it just feels weird to have a story set in that time. Maybe that's what it is.
Well, and I was thinking, because the thing I think is interesting about this is like the commentary about how the world changes after cell phones are invented.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really interesting reference. But yeah, like he's talking about like the Black Eyed Peas and Chumbawamba at the dance or something. And no, he's not listening to that. But I did think it was really interesting, like when he, it might not be Chumbawamba, but it was something like that. Maybe I've just been listening to too much Chumbawamba is my problem. But like it just talking about paywalls and everything, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of reference that I like, especially for a writer who really like experiments with that kind of stuff. Like when he wrote You Are, like he was he was like experimenting with like e-readers and stuff. And I think he embraces stuff like that. But one thing I wanted to say about this too, going back to what you're talking about the worlds that he's building. And I think we see a lot of this in Chuck, but like, do you think that like because at the end, he's like, stop making me kill these people from beyond the grave. I wonder if King is thinking like, what's going to happen to my writing after I die? Because I know that he's got stuff that he had, like trunk novels that he hasn't published yet, or like the little nuts that he's saving. And I wonder if he's worried about that, because you see him kind of like explore that a little bit in Finders Keepers and Lacey's story too.
Well,
like,
one of the things that's really stuck out with me is that like in our recent run that we're on, which is like the late 80s, early 90s, it seems as if his output is not nearly as magnificent or like prolific as it is now. I mean, you read that I mean, we shared an article by Anthony Bresnikanowicz, his interview in Vanity Fair, and he's already talking about how he's almost like he's already working on a new novel. Like, and like when you look at like, I just scouring the Wikipedia page for this book, it's like, oh, previously Institute. That was less than a year ago. I mean, that's fucking wild. Like, I just don't like, granted, like Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne came out, I believe, in the same year. And obviously we're going to get to like, Night Winds and Dreamscapes and stuff. So he's always been prolific per se, but like, it does feel very, I don't know. Like it does feel as if he's almost kind of counting down the days. I mean, I talked to my dad, who's the same age as King, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my dad in the next one a little bit, but it almost feels as if like, and my dad's around the same age, and every time I talk to him, he always brings up an anecdote about like how he's older, and like, like last year when I went to go see the Rolling Stones, he was like, God, it's so weird. Like, I remember when I first heard the last time on a bus, and I was going out into college, and I wonder if that's where King is at right now, and if that's kind of where he's kind of having that sort of like that mortality issue almost, and like he's just trying to like churn out as many stories as he can. And then obviously there's the question of like a lot of our readers, our listeners, have actually broached this question of that, like, well, is Joe Hill going to carry on? And I think that's obviously a topic for another episode. But I do think that King is actually having that discussion in his head right now. And like, I think he's had that discussion for the past 20 years. I almost feel like he feels like he's on borrowed time because of the car crash. Because when
that car crash happened, like I remember the headlines were like, we don't know if he's gonna live. Like, I mean, it really was like a big thing, and they thought he was gonna go blind for a while too. I remember it was pretty serious, and they definitely didn't know if he was gonna write again, even if he did live.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I see as the overall theme of this is I think he's kind of finally made peace with that like the car crash, I think, was like a shock, and it like surprised him. And I think that's what like finally got him to finish The Dark Tower. And now I think he's just kind of working his way through this because he survived the car crash and The Dark Tower too. But like then this realization that, I survived this, but I'm still going to die. Yeah. And this is still something that I have to make peace with. And this is like the most at peace I feel him writing about death,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like he talks, I mean, if you jumping ahead to Rat a little bit, that story is all about like, well, I get one story in. You know? Not every author gets, a dozen stories. I mean, King's, this is like what, his 60-something book? It's fucking crazy. Like, I thought a lot about that. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more with the Rat. But hey, look, we've talked a lot about life and death. I think that's a good segue into our next story. But before we get to our next story, we're going to take a break for 1 second. We have an ad. And don't worry, it's going to be in King's Dominion. If it bleeds, we can kill it. Probably my favorite line from Predator. Classic Arnold. Well, now it might be my favorite Stephen King book. What's that you say? Yes, Stephen King has a new book, or rather a novellas collection. It's called, you guessed it, If It Bleeds, and features 4 different stories. One's about a rat, another one's about a man who contains multitudes, there's a cell phone with an afterlife, and even Holly Gibney joins in on the phone. And if you're like us, you'll probably just imagine Cynthia Erivo in the role the entire time. That's a reference to HBO's The Outsider. I didn't kill that kid, Ralph, but you will read this book. After all, we have nothing but long days and pleasant nights ahead of us. Ooh, can't wait. So what are you waiting for, constant listeners? Grab a copy of If It Bleeds, the latest from Cy King. 4 novellas, creepy tales, Holly Gibney, you can't lose. Get it now, wherever books are sold. Hasta la vista, baby. All right, we're back with our next story, and it's
what is it, Mike?
The life of Chuck.
I keep thinking Good Luck Chuck for some reason.
Well, it's not Good Luck Chuck. It's not NBC's Chuck, and it's not Chuck from Better Call Saul. This is
Chuck Norris.
No, this is a wild story. It's a story told in reverse. I'm gonna go right in the synopsis. And it's told over 3 sections. The first part winds up being an existential meditation on the mind and the world we create within. The second part revolves around a pivotal busking incident in Chuck's life. And the third and final part...
haven't we all had a pivotal busking incident?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when I was on, when I was doing the Creep Show cover story last year, I was hanging around Atlanta, and I was on the corner, and I was like... wow, that person's playing the drums. I better go dance right now.
Oh, yeah?
Anyway, the third and final part winds the clock back in time to Chuck's upbringing and a certain cupola, I think I'm saying that right, that may or may not be haunted. I'm going to say, for full disclosure, I was convulsing and crying my eyes out in bed reading this on
Jesus
Saturday morning.
Christ.
I know it sounds ridiculous, and I was
Wait,
embarrassed.
like
I literally
what?
woke up Sammy. She was sleeping, and she was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like,
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, it just hit me hard. And look, I'll say this straight up, like, this is kind of a sloppy story because it's. I mean, King admits himself in the author's note that, like, he literally wrote this with 3 different sections and he kind of strung them together.
Mm-hmm. But
man, I just the progression of this story really hit me in ways that King's writing hasn't hit me since like 11/22/63. And I don't know if I'm alone, but
nope. Yeah, there's a lot in here that does not work, and I do think it's a little hard to see the through line, which is why I enjoyed reading it a second time.
Yeah.
But what works in here really, really works for me, and it was just hitting me at the right time. I think this is like, speaking of the worlds we're creating in our heads. I think this is Stephen King like making peace with the fact that when he dies, his characters are all going to die with him too.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
And I love how it was told in reverse, because it kind of hits on something I've been thinking about for a while with like happy endings. And that's something that King's not always known for, his endings. But like, I've just been thinking recently, like, happy endings don't exist because everything ends and everyone is going to die. And that's just a fact. And so I think by telling this in reverse, like, we're not focused on the end of it. We're focused on the moments, because we don't have happy endings, but we have happy moments.
Yes.
And like, when you can focus on that, and there are some like fantastic happy moments in this, like, that's how you can enjoy your life, and that's how you can keep yourself out of that just waiting to die prison, you know?
Can I ask you a question really quick, just before we go any further? Because I was also a tad confused on the through line of this. So this is how I read the story, but tell me if you guys read it differently, just in terms of what happens. And I guess I'll start chronologically. So Chuck goes to live with his grandparents. He learns that this cupola, that's such a funny word.
Yeah, it's like I Googled it, and it's a top, it's like a top part of a house. Like a vestibule.
Once I saw what it was, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing.
Like Chicago actually has a lot of Chicago houses.
They do, yeah. I always call them turrets, but
but
cupola to me sounds like an Italian deli meat, if you get my drift.
Cupola.
Cupola. But yeah, so he's introduced to this haunted cupola and by his grandfather, and is able to communicate with the dead, and that combined with this "I contain multitudes" quote, to me gives him I guess some kind of power when the world ends, and maybe him dying is part of the cause of the world ending, because he's got so much power and we keep seeing his face everywhere. So I got that this was him, even though he was dying, it was kind of his consciousness spreading out into the universe and like seeing all the multitudes come out. And then in the middle of that, we have this very realistic important busking scene. That was sort of how I read it, but did you guys read it differently? I was wondering if I missed something. Yeah.
For me, it's literally just my problem with this story is that the part I like most is the third part, like him when he was young, because it does actually it feels like a King story, and it has a good hook, and it actually develops character. But I think what he's getting at here is he's riffing on a theme that's sort of impossible that writers, sort of the greatest writers that of the canon of literature have grappled with forever, which is like, how do you convey the magnitude and the breadth of the human mind, and the idea that every single person has that much within them. They have worlds within them, and that's why we have this Walt Whitman line, "I contain multitudes," and everything, and which is a beautiful idea, and it's something that I appreciate King sort of tackling this, but it's, like I said, it's an impossible theme. I mean, it's something that James Joyce was writing about in Portrait of the Artist as a young man, It's the whole concept of like, how do you convey when a moment that would be unremarkable to anyone around you, how do you convey to them something that changed you so profoundly? And that's such a deeply human idea, and I think that's really lovely. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but for me, that whole first part is not literal in any sense of the word. I think it's just I think that is just sort of King's manifestation of this is the world that exists within this man's mind.
Exactly.
And then we just get, who is this guy, you know? And
weird. I read it so much more literally. I don't know. And that's why I said I feel like I missed something, because I'm like, I don't think this post-apocalyptic thing really matches up with what's going on in the
right.
It's almost like a Pixar version of like the degradation of the mind, you know, like when you look at like Inside Out and like how and obviously with the forthcoming Soul coming soon from Pixar, probably delayed because we're in a pandemic, but the way that Pixar kind of personifies and creates characters out of themes and feelings and whatnot, I felt like this was King trying to do that, especially with this first chapter. Like none of these characters in the first the first section exist. They only exist as like ideas or thoughts or feelings or anxieties or fears or whatever it is that's inside Chuck's mind. Yeah. I agree,
it's
Randall.
Chuck's dominion, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It is Chuck's dominion. And like, I think that, you know, you're right. James Joyce, even struggled. Like Ulysses even tries to get at this a little bit.
It's the plight of the great literary writers, which is like, how do you convey like the actual real depth of a human? And that's extremely difficult. And that's something that, King writes beautiful characters all the time. And what I appreciate about this story is how he's really trying to grapple with that. Like I'll read this section here, which is from the third part, but he's talking about being, moonwalking under the basketball hoop, moving to the music inside, and then he says he's reflecting on this 7th grade moment that he had, and he always lied about how he got the scar, right? And then they ask him, why would you lie about that? And he said, why had he told the lie then, if not to cast himself as the hero of a fictional story? Because the scar was important for another reason, because it was part of a story he couldn't tell, even though there was now an apartment building standing on the site of the Victorian house where he had done most of his growing up, the haunted Victorian house. The scar meant more, so he had made it more. He just couldn't make it as much more as it really was. That made little sense, but as the glioblastoma continued its blitzkrieg, it was the best his disintegrating mind could manage. He had finally told her the truth of how the scar actually happened, and that would have to do. But the line when he says the scar meant more, so he had made it more, that really landed with me, because I've done that. I've taken because you want to convey why something was important, and you make up a bunch of bullshit so somebody else can understand it. You know what I mean? But the thing is, like, it's ephemeral. Like the thing whatever it was that spoke to you in that moment, it's such an internal thing, and that's what I think is really beautiful about this story. But for me, it's some really lovely, good writing, like existential musings that are just strung together with 3 stories that, in my mind, really don't hang together. I really like the first part. I think it's actually kind of spooky, like the idea of these billboards showing up and then his face showing up in all the windows. That like freaked me out. I was like excited.
It's the scariest part of this book. Like, for sure.
And then I got to the dancing and I was like, no thanks.
Well, here's the thing.
I like the dancing.
But here's the thing. I agree, Randall. Like because look, if we look at, like, when I read the author's note and he said, well, I don't really have. He literally says, well, these stories, I had these 3 stories and I kind of strung them together. That literally kind of made me appreciate a little bit even more, because he's kind of being self-effacing about it. He's like, all right, because I even reread the first part and I was like, all right, what about Chuck's life? Now that we know Chuck, what kind of, surfaces in this fictional world he has in his head? And it really doesn't. Like, it is, part and parcel, like, separate from this actual story. But the thing is that, and why I think he earns the schmaltzy, and I think he earns a lot of the moments after that, is that exact moment that you put right there. And I tie it with this feeling that we're currently, it's almost like weirdly prescient that this first section would have the world collapsing at a time and when this book is going to come out where the world feels like it is kind of ending, because I mean when I posted about the review, talking about this book or whatever, there were a few constant listeners that responded being like, oh, that first part of Chuck like really hit hard. And it's weirdly prescient in that sense that like you do feel that way. But here's where I took solace in it, and what really I feel like I've kind of made peace with why I was crying and convulsing is that for me, when this whole pandemic started, and this is going to be a small, short, long tangent, but I assure you it's earned. When this first pandemic started, I was very calm, and I was very, calm and calculated in the sense because in my head, the world always feels like it's ending. And anyone here that works in that's on this podcast can attest to that because I'm an anxious mess. But as this is going on, and as I'm seeing the world sort of kind of falling apart here and there, I've really started taking stock and value into the small things that happen in life, like a long walk with Sammy, like being able to meet up with Randall, like for the 5 or 10 minutes that we're actually be able to hang out in real life. When, even just passing a microphone like together, talking on Zoom for Fridays, for 20 or 30 minutes, having late night chats with and stuff with like that with people online, and the Twitter exchanges back and forth with Jenn, thinking about like all those little moments back in the past where I totally took for granted because I felt that was norm and that was the thing that we were always going to have. But the thing that this pandemic has taught me is that this stuff will go away. And it's not going to go away because of the pandemic. It's going to go away because we're going to go away. And my dad has constantly told me, because I'm a fucking psychopath when it comes to just thinking the world is over. I literally will text my dad and just be like, this thing, today sucked. My life sucks. I hate it, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And I totally just missed the fact that like, no, there's a lot of good and I should appreciate that good because it's not always going to be there. And this pandemic has taught me that. And it's taught me that, on a long enough timeline, we are going to be Chuck and just kind of gasping and holding on to and clenching the things that brought us joy and the things that that hit us the hardest. And I didn't really think of myself in these moments. I thought about my dad and King and exactly what you were talking about, Jenn, with like how King's probably where he's at right now. But I really applied it to my dad and like a lot of people that are at that age right now where they probably see their mortality louder than ever. And that's what really hit me and hit me hardest and that's where I made peace with the first section because that feeling of everything falling apart. I mean, literally the first part is about the earth dissolving. I mean, California is dissolving into pieces. And that's honestly what anxiety is. It's honestly what the mind makes you feel. It makes you feel as if the world and the floor beneath you is falling and it's gone and nothing matters and it's all going to be over. And what those next 2 chapters taught me is that, man, you really got to fucking value when you are there and the floor is there and the world is great and the sun is out and the fucking music is happening. As schmaltzy as that sounds, it is fucking true. And I'm a cynical fucking person. I'm a totally cynical person. I'm negative constantly most of the time. In fact, I've dissuaded a lot of friends because of it. But that is something that like really hit me hard. And like that's why, faults or not, and King being self-effacing and saying literally right out there that this is a fucking crazy disparate story. That's where I was like, okay, you still hit something at the end. And like, But anyway, I digress.
No, that's super well said, Mike. And I like that second section for the very same reasons. And I know if it's okay to say, I think I'm probably less cynical and negative than you in real life. But even with an optimist idiot like me, it's still when he describes the way the sun is shining and those moments where you're walking in a city and you just feel the electricity crackling everywhere. I mean, I really did picture like walking down. It's so dumb, but like walking down Michigan Avenue across from Millennium Park, like in the summertime, right? Because like Chicago summers are a thing to behold, especially if you live there. And of course, right now it's even more hard hitting because we don't know what the summer is going to look like there, even if it is really nice outside and whatever else. And so I think like cheesy musical references aside, and cheesy, the moment that made me laugh is where they all gather in the van at the end and do like the group hug. Like,
The stinky group hug.
Yeah,
do this, guys.
Oh God. I was like, oh wow. Like even all that stuff aside, I'm totally on board with what you're saying. I really do think he earned that because he did manage to capture just the joy of life. I know that sounds so corny, but yeah, I think he managed to capture that in a way that felt so genuine to me, and in a way that made me long for just being able to walk outside down a city street with my friends without a mask on, which none of us can really do right now. And so, wait, no, what was it? What did they call themselves for life? What did they say? What's the club?
Buskers for life?
Or something like that. I don't know. So
yeah.
I just picture them in a band like, oh, yeah! It's just super funny to me.
Sweaty
Jen, what did you think about that
story? That brought me... as a former show choir kid, like, I loved all of the dancing parts because there's like, and I also like sang in a lot of choirs. And one of the things I love about that is like when you're performing with people, it's like there's a vibration in the air and like you catch that. And he's got a couple of quotes about like catching the music and it filled him, and like when you're doing that with someone else and you're both kind of on that same vibration, it just lifts you up to this, making this moment like something more. And I think he is really able to capture those kinds of moments occasionally in his writing, like specifically thinking about in 1122 with the pie and all, like throwing the pies and that performance. And I love it when he can hit that because I feel like he is elevating those moments too. And it just like made me think about some of these like moments in my life when it's just like everything is right and everything was like we're all on the same vibration and it's just like we're going and we're like working together to build something that is more than all of us. And I just loved it so much. And I was thinking that's what I want to remember like when I am dying. And like those are the moments in my life that I can really want to embrace, and I don't want to live my life like I'm just waiting to die. And one of the things I was thinking is it reminded me a lot of Shawshank and like the get busy living or get busy dying, because he, in the very last page, he's making that choice to not spend his entire life thinking about the moment where he's going to be in that hospital bed. He makes the choice to really embrace those moments and think this is why I'm here, and these are all of the things I can be, and I'm going to end in this one place, but my life I contain multitudes and I can go in so many different directions. And I think he's also kind of looking back on the high moments of his work. Like it reminded me a lot of Bev and Richie dancing in 1122 also. And it just like it made me it seemed like he was making peace with it too. Because I remember he gave a quote a long time ago saying, it sucks when like what you're most known for was like your fourth book and you've written like 70 more books,
Yeah.
Like that you're not going to keep chasing this high. And if I can see a through line in the beginning section, I think almost like a marriage and like growing up as like a girl, especially a girl in the South, like you always think that's going to be your happy ending, and that when you get married and you're wearing your pretty dress and you look like the Little Mermaid, that's the end and everything's going to be happy forever. And then like when you actually get married, you realize that like life continues and there are going to be great times and there are going to be hard times. And I like that we're seeing this couple that has had the happy ending and then had the downfall of that, and now they're kind of just looking at the pieces and saying, yeah, there are still things that we can really enjoy. And there's another quote where he says they know when to stop, and I don't know if I can find it, but just like they wanted them to do another dance and they didn't, because they knew enough was enough. This was the moment that we stop, and we can still go back and look at those moments. And I think that's kind of what he's doing here. Like, yes, this was a great moment and I wrote this and this was great. May not be like my last book, may not be my best book, but I can still enjoy this,
Yeah. I like what was the quote you said, Jen, that you're like life does have endings but does have, or happy endings but does have happy moments. I really like that.
I like that too, the decision.
And it just depends on where you end the story.
Because like the memories I think that we're going to carry with us into our fight. Like I have these moments in my life where I'll tell myself, I'm like, oh, I'm going to look back on this, like I'm going to remember this. And then it's usually not that. The moments that I do remember, like the moments that stick with me, are always ones that I'm surprised they did. I mean, not always, but like a lot of times it'll like, when I went to Japan, like for my honeymoon, it was incredible. And we did a lot of like really wild, amazing things, but it's not always like the most expensive meal that we had that, I remember as being the best meal we had. Like we ate at a lot of really shitty little diners, and those were some of the best things we ate. And I think that's just an example of sort of what this is going for, which is like, you can have like, it's not like he didn't love his family and everything, but it's like sometimes when you're talking about personal happiness, it's the moments that you experience yourself, you know? And,
hey, look, Randall, you didn't like the story. You don't get to be in the Buskers Club with us.
No, and that's the thing is, like, it's like, I definitely didn't hate it. I think I'm just being a little bit of a bitch being a catty bitch on the text thread when I make fun of it. It's like, it's more so just like, also, I'll say this too. I am so like poisoned as a human being that like actual sincerity is very hard for me if I'm not just like with my friends or with my wife. If I'm like, you know, in any kind of public setting, or if I'm on the internet, I can't be sincere because I just don't want to show that side of myself ever. And so it's so I think when something is so wholeheartedly sincere as the life of Chuck, it almost makes me mildly uncomfortable because I just I have such sort of an ugly view of the world. And and I'm just kind of like, I used to be able to relate to things like this, but now it's like wholehearted sincerity or unabashed sort of earnestness is something that I feel like I look at with distrust these days, which speaks a lot about me.
Yes.
And I'm I'm certainly not like advocating for that sort of position. But I think sometimes when something touches on schmaltzy, I see it as wholly schmaltzy. When sometimes a little bit of schmaltz, sometimes a little bit of schmaltz is good, and sometimes I am in the mood for it, but not often. And so,
I think a lot of it comes. I think distrust is a key word there, because I think that's literally just caused a lightning bolt in my head, because that's kind of how I feel. It's like we've talked a lot about the schmaltzy and Hallmark moments with like our Stan rewatches, which you can find on our Patreon .com/thebarons. But one of the things I have a distrust of is that like we are in such dour times and such like awful times that like when anyone sort of acts almost saccharine or sort of like, no, things are good, I'm just like, no, fuck you. Like, how could you not see this? Like that there's that edge to me that comes through. But when I think what kind of cuts through that for me here is like the existentialism of it all. I think that if it didn't have that sort of that deep layer, I keep thinking of like the ending of Men in Black when it kind of pulls out and you're like, whoa, the universe is in a marble. I just keep thinking of that. Like, but honestly, if it didn't have that sort of like fourth wall breaking sort of not meta really, because it's really still in his head, but like that sort of deep drilling, I don't know if I would have been that affected by it. But like, I'm with you, Randall, because like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I feel like any sort of schmaltziness comes from the most perverse people out there right now.
Yeah,
and but that's where I get very I get stoic about it.
Yeah, I guess for me, and this says a lot about my view, but I remember reading it and thinking, man, I don't think King fans are going to like this story. But then seeing a lot of the comments, when we posted about it and how many people really liked it, I think that says something. And I think that maybe that sort of that viewpoint and that rumination on beauty and death and again, like you said earlier, Mike, the idea of making a choice and this choice of choosing to sort of leave with the happiness and leave with the good memories is a really lovely idea, and I do think it's something that's really necessary. I'm very glad that people like this story. I certainly would never begrudge anyone for liking this story, even if I am a little bit of a hater. So.
Well, I think one of the biggest strengths of this story is because he flexes his muscle. I mean, we talked to, I think it was either you, Randall, or Dan just mentioned how like this is one of his strong suits, is showing the dismantling of society. Like when I'm reading that first section, it obviously is a left hook when we start getting into the more saccharine parts, because I was like, what the fuck? I didn't expect that. Because it is so creepy in the beginning. And I wonder if, whereas something like Elevation, which is just wholly schmaltzy from beginning to end, and because he kind of hooks us with almost his like sort of greatest hits, and I'm going to talk about greatest hits a little bit more with the Rat, but I wonder if that's one of the reasons why it's able to kind of hook in some of the readers. Like you mentioned, like, oh, I didn't expect like the fans to like it, and there are definitely some fans that did love it, and I wonder if it's because of that, because there is a lot of his sort of like trademark Kingisms that he's had. Like, I mean, you mentioned like the third part feeling more like his old stuff. I think if you took that third part alone, you could easily throw that into like Night Shift even. Like you're at Last Wrong level.
Yeah, I really like the third part the best, yeah.
Right? And like, but like what I wanted to ask is like, I think with the first section, and this kind of separate from what we were discussing altogether with this story, but like, I think this first section kind of proves that like King might be the best at talking about like the rundown of the apocalypse, because I was totally enthralled with everything that was happening in this world at that point. And if there was any negative about it, I had like, it was like, I kind of want to see how this world ends. It's even more.
Yeah, like so many of the like post-apocalyptic stories we see are post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And there's so many that just skip over that part. And I think because they're not going to be able to do it justice. But this, like, I was reading this and I was like, oh, the beams are falling like one by one, you know? Yeah. And I loved like the line where he said, yeah, we've accepted this like, because the numbness has started to set in. And it's just like and especially since we've been revisiting The Stand, like, he just gets into like the reality and like chasing what would actually happen. Yeah. Like one of the things I love so much about Breaking Bad is like there are these decisions and then the show follows those decisions in a realistic way and shows us how they would actually play out rather than like the TV version of what would happen. And I feel like that's what he's doing here. He's like, yeah, people would just walk home because they couldn't get to work physically in their car, you know?
Like the acceptance of everything that was happening was what really hit me hard, especially with like the pandemic, like like the idea that like, well, there's a sinkhole downtown, everyone's going home, who knows if you're going to go back to work, your job might not be there. Like that really hit home because like right now we're finally seeing that like, yeah, people could say that you're furloughed, but that was early on and that was 2 weeks ago. Now society's different. Every week we get different. I mean, every Monday, every Sunday, I dread Monday because I'm like, what is the world going to look like by Friday? And we've seen that for like 2 months now. You know, we're recording this in May. This started in early March. Where we were in March is so much different than where we are now. And reading this first section really hit me in that way. And especially like when his neighbor like kind of sits in the car and they're having that discussion and he's just kind of talking about all the shit that's happening across the globe. And there's this sort of like matter of factness to it. Like, yeah, well, that was a headline. What's going to be in the next one? Like that is what's going to happen. Like I, you know, we've sat here, you know, back in 2017 when we covered The Stand, there's a lot of speculation on what it would be like if this sort of situation happened. And a lot of the speculation that we had in that episode turned out to be sort of sane and logical. And now we're seeing it unfold right now. And granted, we're not in any sort of case where we're like where we're at in the first section of Life of Chuck or in The Stand, but we are seeing a lot of similarities in what would happen, namely because we have an administration that can't hold things together. And that's scary. And that idea that like today is different than tomorrow and the day after that. Oof, man, that was the scariest parts for me in this book.
Susan referenced that we were talking about this morning because I was, you know, most days I feel like it fluctuates how good or bad I feel about this whole thing, and same with her. And we keep, you know, jokingly saying the apocalypse. And then I'm like, well, I know it's not really the apocalypse per se. And she's like, I don't know. She's like, it's like a 20% apocalypse. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty accurate. Sorry, I do not mean to derail the conversation to silliness. I'm literally just picturing the end of this book, zooming out into the galaxy, and we see a marble, and we see two CGI aliens to Danielle. Yeah, it's like the Danny Elfman music, like throwing them in like the marble in this pouch. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tangent there. That's just like way.
Well, look, you mentioned a marble, and the marble rolls on the ground. And what else is on the ground but a rat?
Maybe in your ground.
You know, I'm not Randall. I'm not rocking Randall. I can't make these segs as great as he does, but I thought that was all right. Anyway, our final story, at least for this week, involves a rodent. Not Ratatouille. Patton Oswalt is nowhere near.
Not Splinter. Not Splinter the rat.
Yeah, no. And Brian Dennehy is nowhere to be seen. The late Brian Dennehy. But our final story, it should sound familiar. It involves a troubled writer. And don't we know those in King's Dominion, who absconds to his father's old remote cabin to finally fulfill his dream to write the great fictional novel. Maybe not so great, but just a fictional novel. He just wants to check it off the box. But let's just say he's got a friend with a certain Faustian bargain.
A certain
Faustian bargain. King loves those. We've seen it a million times. Like literally, Leland Gaunt is the personification of this. I believe the monkey in the Skeleton Crew is pretty much the same thing. I feel as if we've talked about greatest hits King. This is the ultimate greatest hits King. Like I'm thinking 2006, The Replacements greatest hits. I'm thinking the Who's greatest hits, the double box set. The short story felt as if it was like King being like, all right, I'm just going to put all my fucking quirks and trademarks into one thing. Here you go. Have fun. Comfort food galore.
And I loved it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I did too. Yeah. Because I don't think it's derivative.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I kept keeping a column of things he's revisiting, and it's like longer than I can see on my screen without scrolling. Like there's so much here, and I love it because I think he's riffing on it, but he's not redoing. You know,
No.
Even with the Faustian bargain, like because Full Dark No Stars ends with a story that's very similar to this fair extension, but I think this is like what we were saying. Like this is the positive version of that. You know.
Well, I mean, last year, it is a positive version for sure. I mean, because there's a lot of idealism towards the ending. Mm-hmm. But to go back to what you were discussing with, earlier on Jenn, I do think this is almost him kind of contending with, it sounds dramatic to say past sins, but look, we didn't like 4 Past Midnight last year. I think, if anything, that might have been one of our lowest rated books. Yeah, and it was a drag because it literally took up the whole summer. And hopefully, fingers crossed, Nightmares and Dreamscapes is an improvement over that because you literally
it very much is. Nightmares and Dreamscapes, there's also so many stories, and like I said, there's a couple stinkers in there, but like I think overall it's much better and just like cuts to the chase a little bit more. It's not that slog like quality that 4 Past Midnight does, well, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, the stickers are short.
But did you feel as if like this story felt like a more successful version of Secret Window, Secret Garden?
Yes.
I actually thought a lot of Secret Window, Secret Garden because of going to the rural setting, like I guess it's not a Western, it's more like a Southern Gothic story he's writing in Secret Window, Secret Garden, but still had that kind of like gritty nature to it. And it was just a lot better pace though, because I don't like that story. I don't like Secret Garden, Secret Window, whatever the hell it's called, very much. But with Rat, well, I don't know. I like what you guys are saying about the greatest hits because I feel like he's taking those hits and still kind of subverting them. Like we've seen the monkey, we've seen the monkey's paw filter through this kind of animal thing that King does. But I love how the rat speaks so eloquently and straightforwardly. Like I feel that feels new to me and feels like something we haven't seen before. And Randall, I know you hate the wisecracking ghost, and not that the rat is a ghost, but like
no, I liked it. I liked it.
No, I liked it here because I think I like it because he's just honestly know what the rat reminded me of, even though it is much more verbose than this character I'm about to say, is when Bart Simpson is the Raven on The Simpsons.
Yes.
Like the rat was just this cool and collected presence. Like blah, blah. He even says like, well, you mean like no, I never said he would die of cancer, and also I'm a rat. You know what you were getting into. Like I like that he was just so straightforward. That was like so funny and rewarding and interesting to read for me.
Are you saying that the rat is a mini Pascal?
He's a little like Pascal, yeah.
Along with Jen, what Dan was saying, I'll just say it was fun to read a King story where I genuinely thought it was funny. Like,
yes,
like King humor, it can go a couple different ways. Like sometimes it's just sort of like warm. Like if it's like kind of a wisecracking older character who, or like Dolores Claiborne's a great example. I'm working through that right now, and there's a lot of humor just in the language of that. Like her turns of phrase are kind of like a hilarious mix of like folksy and profane, and that'll make me laugh. But then sometimes King tries to do sort of like more traditional humor, and usually it kind of falls a bit flat. And so I would say that the rat in this story I actually thought was genuinely funny. Like I was laughing out loud because it was obviously the juxtaposition of sort of the dignified way of speaking with this rat, and then also sort of the self-awareness, like you mentioned, Dan, with the whole idea of just like, what you're getting into. I'm a rat, like that to me is very funny. And and kind of weirdly charming. Like, I kind of love the way that it pivots in that direction. So yeah, I love this story, and it had a few tropes that I always love in King. Like, we've obviously been talking about them, like there's so many, but the two that I really love, I always love when he has a character sort of weather an illness and then come out on the other end, you know?
He's come out the other side.
Yeah, I always enjoy that journey. I think he writes that really well, sort of the hallucinatory nature of it. And then also the sort of weathering a storm as well. You know, I mean, somebody who's trapped and the weather outside is genuinely dangerous, but you're sort of like you're weathering it, and the person comes out at the other end unscathed, and all the warnings and everything from the person at the gas station and all that kind of stuff I really enjoy. It reminded me of The Shining a lot. Obviously, there's a lot of Shining in this, but
totally,
yeah. And then also, sort of the end of The Stand when Stu is sick, and I don't know, and yeah, obviously there's like the Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov kind of moment there too, with it, which is like, I don't know, the way that the mind sort of drifts in sickness, and it's something that I really enjoyed about it. But I also just, King writes writers a lot, but he writes writers a lot because he's really good at writing writers. And I always thoroughly enjoy, well, not always, because Ben Mears kind of sucks, but for the most part,
I love Ben Mears.
Do you really love Ben Mears?
Yeah, he's a hunk. What can I say?
He is a hunk.
No, I like Ben
man.
Mears. For me, Ben Mears is like he's like the Nick Carroll of the King universe. It's just like
he's a Red Ranger of Stephen King books.
Yeah.
But
where's he, Randall? Yeah, sorry.
But I
sorry
think
to derail it to Mears.
Oh no, it's fine. I think what stood out most to me though, and this felt fresh, although I haven't read like Bag of Bones in many years, so maybe this idea was in there. But the idea that because King often writes about writing as if it's a freeing kind of thing, like it's a joyous thing. It's something that, but it's also compulsive, like the dark. I think about The Dark Half and things like that, and the whole idea that there's sort of a euphoria or a general sense of what's sort of looking for abandonment that kind of comes with writing. And what I loved about this story was that it framed writing, I think, in maybe a more relatable way to writers, which is that writing is excruciating. Like writing is hard, and this sounds dramatic, but I think it ruins some people. I think, and I like that he framed the creative process through sort of the lens of mental illness in this story, and the idea that for this guy, like he's threatening his marriage with this book that he wants to write, because last time he tried to write a book, it drove him insane. He hated himself, and he was resenting his wife and his children. He almost burned down the house. Like, it's a very destructive art for him, and I like the idea that that King could frame it through that lens, because that's just something I feel like I haven't seen him do a lot, and it's something I think all writers struggle with, which is the idea that if my writing isn't good, then I'm not good. If I have a good day writing, then, I mean, obviously I relate to this, and I'm sure you guys do too. It's like, if I have a good day of writing, I'm in the best mood. If I have a bad day of writing, I just want to fucking like close my eyes and scream into a pillow. And it's like it dictates so much of your mood and your general temperament, because you obviously, when you're writing especially personal stuff, you're putting so much of your self-worth into it, and you want to justify that. So I would say that was something that really stuck out to me. And oftentimes I don't really, connect with the main characters of his short stories or novellas. I'm more in it for the story. Like in the Harrigan's Phone story, like I didn't really care about the main character. I thought the journey was interesting and the story was interesting, but it's not, he's not a Beverly Marsh or someone who I'm like really invested in. And so I found myself actually quite invested in this character, because we saw him through those ups and downs, and then we also saw him weather physical turmoils, mental turmoils, and also we saw the highs and the lows, but sort of the joy when he's having, like, how the novel's just flowing out of him, and then sort of the quiet creep of the writer's block that sets in. So to me it was a very successful story. Again, I wouldn't call it remarkable, but I would say that it stands out in King's collective oeuvre, and it to me is quirky in ways that his work often isn't. So
yeah.
What would you guys say? Would you guys say that, or do you think that the rat is real? Because that was something I was wondering throughout the book.
Here's the thing with the rat. I think the rat is honestly supposed to be some sort of manifestation of what exactly Randall was discussing, in that this is the torture that you get when you're writing. It's almost as if you feel as that writing comes from some sort of like, when you're to accomplish something, you almost feel as if you have to do the impossible. You have to make some sort of bargain. You have to make some sort of deal. Like, all right, well, if I'm going to get over this hurdle, then I'm going to kind of spiritually feel some guilt with it. Like, it almost felt like this sort of innate Faustian bargain that, you know, and I feel like that was a reason why King made it a rat and made it so comical and almost made it so farcical. Like, this idea that the rat is so matter-of-factly and also so sort of sassy kind of felt as if like he was talking to himself. There was this sort of it was almost like Secret Window, except it wasn't as malicious. It was just very, all right, well, we're going to get you through this, even if it means that you're going to have to kind of bring some guilt with it to make it feel as if you're going to be able, like, to kind of give you some sort of drive to kind of get you over it. I personally don't think the rat was real. I think that it literally was supposed to be some sort of metaphor, like a sort of totem, so to speak. And I kind of like it that way a little bit more because, you know, as Randall was discussing, like, that is the truth about writing. It's like you almost feel as if like there's always that imposter syndrome, and it's almost like you kind of have to like ignore the imposter to actually succeed. And I feel like the way that the character does here is by having this manifestation of the rat. And maybe, I don't know. What do you think, Jen?
I didn't actually ever question whether the rat was real or not. I guess I just kind of was along for the ride. But I like that idea because what I saw when I was reading this is I saw like a parallel. I saw a parallel to like King's addiction, you know? And I saw like, I didn't really think of Secret Window either. I was thinking of The Shining so much. And like, this is like a better version of The Shining where Jack actually chose to leave the hotel when he could have, you know, and saved his family. And I felt like he was kind of exercising so much guilt and like almost wondering like if alcoholism hadn't been my addiction or if drugs hadn't been my addiction, if writing maybe was my addiction all along. And that was a way that I was managing in that. And if I had had to give up my family for writing, would I have? And what choice would I have made? Or would I have been able to walk away with only writing one book? Because for somebody who's written like 70, like I could imagine that being something that he's really struggled with a lot. So like the rat is almost like the monkey on his back, you know? And like what you were saying with the imposter syndrome, the line that really gave me chills is when the rat was saying, you didn't write this, I wrote this. And like, where is this writing actually coming from? And where are all of these stories coming from? And I kind of think of it as a well sometimes. And I like the idea that like, it's a lot harder to get to that well for some people than it is other people. The other part that creeped me out was when you could start to see the like, I don't want to say insanity, but like that doubt start to creep in. It was so subtle, and it was just repeating that phrase. And that reminded me of In a lot. And I think when King is really going, like, I feel like he is able to really show that creeping insanity coming. And I feel like here he crept up and like to bring back The Shining, like he looked around the corner and he walked away. You know?
Yeah. Well, I like too, because I feel like it would have been totally easy to make this guy a complete piece of shit. Totally. But I like that we see him being loving with his family. Then we see him getting annoyed with his family when he gets up to the cabin. Then we see him show this great deal of compassion for this rat. And then we see him also do something possibly kind of despicable, depending on if the rat is real or not. And so, like, yeah, like regardless of the reality of whether the rat is real or not, I feel like he paints the writer so in such a psychologically complex way that just makes it an interesting read. And yeah, I know, like you guys said, I know we always joke about King always writes about writers, but I mean, he's with how prolific and talented he is, he really does have insight into how writers think, and I think he captures that, and also makes it universal for people who aren't writers, you know. So yeah, it was I was all along for the ride, man. It went down smooth.
It was a little wink into the on writing too, like his routine, and like I loved when he was talking about the selective perception. I was like, oh yeah, that would be hard.
I would say that as for the rat, I thought it was real. Like, although I totally agree with the interpretation that it's all in his head, especially with the way it speaks. But I don't know. I think like at least with the way that I was consuming the story, which was pretty quick in just one sitting, I kind of, blew through it. I don't know. I think like Jen, I was along for the ride, and I sort of enjoyed the idea of the rat being real and speaking to him. And it was just, I don't know, there was like a quirkiness to it that I didn't want to just attribute to it being like a larger metaphor or like, more figurative. But I also do think that interpretation works as well. And the ambiguity, I think, is a strength of the story.
Yeah, because I mean, like honestly, like the metaphorical idea of it being this sort of fictional being and all in his head kind of seems a little cliche, and one of the reasons why I can't stand Secret Window, because it's just like it's been so done before. But I do think that the way that he toes the line of, well, this could be literal, it could be not, adds to the strength of the story for me. And the fact that it is so joyous and not so cynical. I mean, I also kind of saw ties in Thinner with this a little bit, and just like this sort of it felt very Bachman in a way of like just this relationship with a lot of the people around the town, like kind of how at one point he describes someone who works at the general store as like the refugee from Jurassic Park. I couldn't really understand what he was saying there, but like he's kind of like a very like he's got like this kind of dark edge to him, but at the same time like he doesn't skew too dark where you're like, no, fuck this guy, he deserves his fate. Like you do care for him, and it stays jovial enough, and they pick, granted the wife of the person who works at the college dies, and that's awful and whatnot. But like
Nadine,
like if Nadine had King's Dominion right there. But,
how I'd love to love Nadine.
How I'd love to love Nadine. But there's enough where you're like kind of like, well, he had cancer and he was going to die, and so that it's not like as harming and disarming as it could have been. So I think the jovial touch added with like the sort of vagueness of whether or not it is literal or metaphorical. Yeah, certainly succeeds for me.
And like Jen was saying, it doesn't go quite as dark as that. It's the final story in Full Dark No Stars, right? Where it's the
fair extension.
And that story almost gets like, I think gets off on how nasty it's being, because like the guy who's his rival, just like everything horrible happens to him, and then and I think there's a part where he's like laughing at it, like, and his wife's like, "What's so funny?" He's like, "Oh no, it's nothing." And so, and once again, I think the ambiguity of it, whether it's real or not, also like brings the morality into question. But I like it equally if it's whether it's real or a metaphor. So.
It's like if Mr. Jingles was an asshole,
Yeah, totally. I was, I like. I don't like. I guess I don't love rats and mice in real life. I mean, I wouldn't hurt one, I don't think. But King makes me like him. Mr. Jingles, nice guy. And this rat. If I hope to see him on my doorstep tonight, maybe.
And then you've got the Rat Man.
Yeah, another Rat Man, of course. Yes, the Rat Man. Yeah, and then a great graveyard shift. King
well, look, we'll keep the Rat Man in the whatever realm we want to call the stand, and we'll keep the rat up in the cabin because we're closing the door. We're going home. We're not going to go all the way home yet because we have one more pit stop next week when we actually talk about the titular story, If It Bleeds. Yay. And we're going to go all in on Holly Gibney because, look, I'm just going to say right now, it's probably not the last story that we see of Holly Gibney, but at least for now.
Hey,
so we'll talk.
As King says in the author's note, I love Holly.
He was on Colbert like last night, Tuesday night, and he said in that interview, I believe, that Holly is like his favorite character. So
I just don't get it, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone. Like, I mean, it must be popular. Like, he wouldn't be doing it, but
his all of his.
I got some thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I love her. I love her now.
You like her? Yeah.
I want him and Alan her and Alan to hook up. Well, not hook up, but like run around and like be gunslingers together.
Yeah. I am liking her a little bit more. The more it becomes like, it's like almost like a supernatural detective agency. Like I kind of like that. Like as he's kind of easing into that a little bit more. But man, I think he's seriously written so many books about her now. Like even though she like honestly almost as many as he has with Roland, and that's just. But I don't know. She is quirky.
Well, hey, Caffrey,
anyway,
save it for next week.
I'll save it.
By the way, I'm actually getting a text here. It's from, oh, wow. It's from Mr. Harrigan. It reads, CCC you next week. Well, hey, he's not wrong. As I said before, we are going to be back next week with our second installment of If It Bleeds, which I guess is at this point it's just become a review of the entire book. But look, the good news is that this isn't the only episode you can get right now. If you are a member of our Patreon, we just dropped our fourth and final episode of our rewatch of the Stand miniseries. That's like, this is already almost a 2-hour episode, and that was almost a 2-hour episode. That's 4 hours of the Losers you get this weekend. So
yeah, that's a lot.
The Losers.
Yeah,
and we've got more on the way. We've got mini-sodes for our Patreon episodes that are on the way, and we'll be dropping the first edition of our newsletter later this month for Patreon subscribers. So if you haven't signed up already and you want to, you can find us at patreon.com/thebarons.
Oh, so much stuff. It's insane. So in addition to bonus episodes, it's funny because we just uploaded a Kingmas episode. So we're not only just giving you new content, we're giving you old content that's in the archive.
Yeah, Kingmas 2017. That was a good up.
Yeah, I think you sang a Christmas hymn in the beginning that cracked me up. And a lot of Bosch watch. And look,
we were big on
talking
Bosch,
about Bosch next week too, because there are some references to Bosch.
I still know nothing about that fucking show except how much you guys talk about it. I know nothing about it.
And Mac's the only one who's watched it.
He's the only one that's watched it all the way from front to back. And what I love about the Patreon episodes is that we still got we got a lot of the Bosch watch that's in there, and we include the Roxy Music song. So whatever.
Hell yeah.
May is going to be crazy. We're going to have another live watch. We're going to have a couple of things that are in the can that we're going to be discussing, all of which you could find on our socials, which, by the way, you should follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Randall, what do we give? We give fresh content? Is that
fresh
what we
content? Every single different platform, we got the fresh content.
Always on there. And be sure to leave us a review. I mean, for Christ's sake, we get some crazy reviews on there. We got some negative ones. Some negative Nancy's went on there, kind of complain about how we're doing things around town. Look, we got to survive also. What can I say? And also,
only leave us a review if it's 5 stars.
Yeah, 5 stars.
We don't need any. We don't need any old poopies.
No poopies, please.
Poops.
No, it's not fair. It's not needed. But anyway. Until next week, when we're up at Finders Keepers, taking the elevator before it gets too crazy, and we see Holly Gibney, until then, experience and enjoy, and just as we learned with the life of Chuck, suck out the marrow of life over long days
and
pleasant
nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
This is the end of our show. For now. We hope you enjoyed this production. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, and more.